Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our day-long retreat, which is offered. The theme is compassion in action, and we're offering this as a fundraiser for Buddhist Global Relief. For those of you who are not familiar with Buddhist Global Relief, it's an amazing organization, nonprofit organization started by Venerable Bodhi, who we all adore and look up to. That is, the mission is to relieve world hunger and bring relief to people who are facing different struggles, poverty, etc., throughout the world. So there is a link in the live chat to where you can go and support all the beautiful things that this organization is doing. And if you also feel extra generous, there's also a link to a little fundraiser that Empty Cloud Monastery, where Bante and I are currently at, is doing for a food justice program of feeding people from people who are struggling during COVID-19, during this pandemic, and in particular Hispanic communities here in Jersey who have been severely impacted by the lack of jobs and the lack of infrastructure for them to even get access to food, since a lot of the sort of governmental help is not available to a lot of the people from that community. So there is a link to both in the live chat, and please put your priority in donating to Buddhist Global Relief. And if you want to double it up, you can also go on donor box to that link. All right, and I'll pass it on to Bante Sudazo, who will be sharing some words this morning on compassion in action. We will also have an extra meeting at 2:30 p.m. and at 7:30 as usual. All right, and welcome to Bante Sudazo, first of all, and hello Gita, hello Bradley, hello Jens, Dan, Elaine, Marielle, Liz, and Kevin. Welcome to all of you.
So we'll start with a period of meditation. So please go ahead and get in meditation posture. So sitting up nice and straight. Taking a few long, slow, deep breaths to settle the body and mind. Bringing a slight smile to your face. And bring attention to your state of mind. Looking for any feeling of discomfort, discontent, dissatisfaction, unease, of any sort, whether from body sensations, from memories, from desires, from any source at all. Just looking for that feeling of discomfort, a feeling of unease. Noticing also the wish we have to be free of that discomfort, the yearning for freedom from unease, freedom from displeasure. And reflecting, it is not just me who feels discomfort. All beings feel discomfort. It is not just me who feels pain. All beings feel pain. It is not just me who feels displeasure. All beings feel displeasure. It is not just me who wishes to be free of pain. All beings wish to be free of pain. It is not just me who wishes to be free of discomfort. All beings wish to be free of discomfort. May all beings be free of pain. May all beings be free of discomfort. May all beings be free of unease. Feeling our own pain, our own discomfort, our own unease, as a universal experience, not just mine, but everyone, wishing, may everyone be free of pain, may everyone be free of sorrow, may everyone be free of despair. And remembering any time that you were treated unfairly, unkindly, whether with harsh words, betrayals, violence, and remembering how unpleasant it was. And reflecting, it is not just me that has been harmed, it is not just me that has been wronged. All beings experience violence, oppression, injustice. And just as I wish to be free of harm, all beings wish to be free of harm. May all beings be free of harm. May all beings be safe. May all beings be treated with respect, kindness, and fairness. Remembering a time when you were helped by another, when you were given support, kindness, encouragement. Remembering how wonderful that felt to be seen, to be cared about, to be supported in times of difficulty. In reflecting, it is not just me who appreciates support. It is not just me who values being helped. All beings appreciate support in times of need. May all beings receive support in times of need. Bringing to mind all the pain, sorrow, confusion, despair that we felt for as far back as we can remember. Recognizing it is not just me who suffers, all beings suffer. It is not just me who wishes to be free of suffering, all beings wish to be free of suffering. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings be free of suffering. Bringing to mind all the stories you've heard of others suffering, others being oppressed, others mistreated, and recognizing at some point in the long line of birth after birth after birth, I have been in exactly that same position. In the long round of rebirth, at one time it was me with a foot on my throat. At one time it was me detained for no crime. At one time it was me denied medical treatment. At one time it was me attacked purely for the color of my skin. One time it was me, denied religious training because of my gender. Feeling that pain, that torment, that despair. The feeling of helplessness. Wishing that help would come, but knowing that it will not. And turning that into this bright wish, may all those in need be offered help. May all the downtrodden be lifted up. May the oppressed be given equality. May all those in suffering be free of suffering. In forming the vow, I will do what I can to alleviate the suffering of the world. I will do what I can to support the oppressed. I will do what I can to help those in need. I will not turn a blind eye to atrocity, and I will condemn it for what it is. Because all beings wish to be happy. All beings wish to be free of suffering. May all beings be free of suffering.
Thank you, Bante, for that powerful guided meditation. And welcome to a few more friends who have joined us. Marielle, Liz, Kevin, Rich, and Dan is saying sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, and at this time, Bante will be sharing some words of Dhamma on compassion in action, the theme that is for today. And if you have any questions and comments, feel free to add them in the live chat so then we can go through them at the end of the sharing.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Well, good morning, friends. So today we are cultivating compassion in support of Buddhist Global Relief. So Buddhist Global Relief is an organization started by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi with the mission of helping to reduce the suffering of the world. So Buddhist Global Relief focuses particularly on the issue of hunger, malnutrition. So their main focus is supporting giving food to those who need food all over the world. They also help to alleviate the causes of poverty and lack in various ways. They support education programs for young people, especially young women. They support a wide range of different programs which are aimed at helping those in need, uplifting those who are disadvantaged in one way or another. So I highly recommend checking out Buddhist Global Relief and doing what you can to support their cause. They do a lot of really amazing work all over the world to help alleviate human suffering. So what I'd like to speak about then today is the subject of compassion. And compassion is one of the central principles of Buddhism. And it's not something which can be overlooked or swept aside. So sometimes you'll hear people say, we just need insight, we just need wisdom. Buddhism is a path of wisdom. If we just develop sufficient insight, then we'll attain enlightenment, and that'll be that. We don't need to bother with all this compassion stuff. That's not for us. It's not needed. Sometimes you'll hear people say these things. And that's a complete misunderstanding of Buddhism. So the Buddha, all throughout the Pali Suttas, the Buddha constantly spoke about uh, forming the wish for all beings to be happy, for all beings to be free of suffering. And not just forming the wish, may all beings be free of suffering, may all beings be happy, but also speaking in praise of that, speaking in praise of not killing, speaking in praise of not stealing, speaking in praise of not harming, speaking in praise of generosity, speaking in praise of supporting others, speaking in praise of benefiting others. And not just speaking in praise of such things, but also doing it, performing acts of generosity, uplifting others, helping others, supporting others, benefiting others, as well as ourselves. So there's a sutta where the Buddha lists 4 kinds of people. So there's the kind of person who benefits neither themselves nor others, the kind of person who benefits themselves but not others, the kind of person who benefits others but not themselves, and the kind of person who benefits both themselves and others. And of course, the Buddha says that the 4th kind of person is the best. The person who benefits both themselves and others. This is the best kind of person. So this message runs throughout all the suttas. This importance the Buddha placed on not drawing a line between self and others, but seeking to be of benefit to everyone without exception. And again, the emphasis here is on without exception. So not putting some people above others or below others, not putting ourselves above or below others, not dividing the world into those who we like and therefore support, and those we don't like and therefore don't support. But treating all with the spirit of kindness and fairness and equity, treating all with compassion, looking on the world with eyes of love. So this manifests in action, it manifests in activity. So compassion is not just a meditation practice that we do once in a while when we get bored of vipassana. Compassion is not something that you think about while snuggled up in your armchair reading a book. Compassion is not something that you write cute poetry about. Compassion, I think, can be all of those things, but it's something which manifests through speech and deed. So the Buddha said, all speech and all action arises from mind, arises from mind states. So what we habitually do with our mind determines what we say and determines how we act. So in other words, if we are not acting out compassion, if we are not consciously and frequently engaging in verbal and physical acts to alleviate the suffering of others, then that indicates that our mind is not sufficiently well developed. It indicates that we have not put much effort into cultivating wholesome mind states. It indicates that we haven't developed compassion sufficiently. It indicates that there's a lack. So it's really important to cultivate compassion within ourselves. So starting off with developing the mind states and attitudes of compassion, but then to put that into activity, to live it out in our lives. So there's a few reflections on this that I find incredibly potent, incredibly useful. So the first one is the recollection of past lives. And in this case, I don't actually mean literally remembering exactly what you did in your last life or the life before that or the life before that. Though if you do that, that's fine too, I suppose. But rather recollecting the concept of past lives. So the Buddha says that we have lived countless lives before this one. And throughout the course of all those countless lives, we have been in every imaginable situation, in every imaginable circumstance, except for enlightenment. But we've experienced everything else that samsara has to offer, all of it. The good and the bad, the pleasant and the unpleasant. We've experienced all of it at one point or another. So for those of you who have watched the video of George Floyd or learned about it, at some point you were George Floyd on the ground with your throat being crushed. At some point that was you. And the police officer, now ex-police officer, that was you at some point. This is not some news story that's very distant and removed from you. This is a personal, lived experience that every one of us has been through. It's not something distant that only happens to other people. We were those people at one point. So it's not a huge leap of imagination to bring to mind what it feels like. What it feels like to be the person on the ground, feeling the life being crushed out of you minute after minute, slow, agonizing minute, knowing that there's nothing you can do about it. And at some point, we were that person who realized I can just crush this person under me and nobody will stop me, and I'm going to get away with it. At some point, that was us too. It's not so distant from now. It's not so distant from here. That was us at some point. And so every atrocity that you ever hear about, you can reflect on in the same way. At some point, I was the victim in exactly that situation. And at some point, I was the abuser in exactly that situation. I felt the pain and I have inflicted it. And both situations are marked by suffering and torment. So we recognize the dukkha that's experienced. We recognize the misery and turmoil that's experienced in every act of oppression, in every act of cruelty, in every act of violence. And we wish for those beings to be free of suffering. We wish for them to be free of affliction. And again, we hear stories about people starving in Haiti and India and Africa and even here in New Jersey, we hear about it. But again, it seems distant. We go to our refrigerator and it's stocked with enough food. We can go and get more whenever we need to. So we don't think too much about it. We're like, oh yeah, I hear there's some people somewhere who are hungry. Well, sucks for them, I guess. And then we go and have a sandwich. But actually, no, that's not some other person somewhere distant. That's you. That's you living in a tiny house with 6 family members and nothing to eat. That's you. That's not somebody else. That's you. That's been you before, countless times. It's been you with hunger gnawing at your belly, wishing that someone would help, but knowing that help is not coming. That was you. That was you. And that was me. But we don't like to think about this, of course. We like to immerse ourselves in willful ignorance. So we binge watch on Netflix while eating snacks, quietly pretending that there's nothing wrong in the world, everything's fine. Or if there's something wrong, it's somewhere far away that doesn't have anything to do with us. But that's just willful ignorance. That's delusion. It doesn't achieve anything useful. It doesn't lead towards enlightenment. It just leads farther away from enlightenment. Pretending that samsara is some beautiful flower garden is completely missing out on the reality of it. Um, so this thought that we can develop wisdom without compassion is actually completely wrong. Because wisdom means clearly seeing reality as it is. And when we clearly see reality as it is, then compassion comes up like a powerful, unstoppable force within us. When we see that man on the ground with his life being crushed out of him, when we see it clearly and truly, not as something separate from us, but that is me, that is my pain, that is my torment, then this surge, this volcanic eruption of compassion bursts within us. What can I do to help? How can I help? What can I do to bring comfort and ease to those who are afflicted? What can I do to prevent these atrocities from happening? What can I do? And we do it. Whatever we can do, we do it. When you hear about families in your own neighborhood who've lost relatives, husbands, wives, fathers, siblings, children, who've lost people in their family to coronavirus, people who are unemployed, um, but who have no access to unemployment payments, have no access to stimulus checks, have no access to any kind of support. People quietly starving in their homes, people facing eviction. And we reflect, that's not somebody else. To say that somebody else is just a form of self-centeredness. It's completely missing the reality of the situation. There is no self, there is no other. We have been that person, and we will be that person again. So right now we live in our little temporary island of illusory safety. But that's only if we close our eyes to the reality of the world. There is no safe place in samsara. There's no peaceful island in samsara. It can't be found. So we reach out a hand to help those who need it, and things start brightening up a little bit. Things start getting a little bit better. So here at Empty Cloud Monastery, we've been distributing boxes of fresh produce uh, to families, people in need, people who have no income or limited income, people who've lost relatives to the virus, people who don't have enough to get by. We've been distributing food to them. And they send us these lovely photographs, these lovely images of people overjoyed and delighted that somebody cares. Someone they've never met cares about them. A couple of bald weirdos in a monastery a few blocks away care about them, even though we've never set eyes on them. We care. So we know how touching that is, because that was us. At one point, we were that person. That person with hunger gnawing at our belly, wondering how we're going to get by. When a box of fresh food turns up at our door, and we're like, whoa, that's amazing. How touching. Somebody cares. Somebody supports. Somebody wants me to be free of suffering. Amazing. Delightful. That was us being supported not so long ago. And that's what we can offer to others. And this is the natural response of wisdom. It's a natural response of recognizing that we're all interconnected. It's the natural response of recognizing that it's not me and that other person who's not me, but recognizing that we're all in the same boat. We're all in this together. That the appearance of separate beings is just the delusion that we're caught in for now. The appearance of separate beings is just a misperception of reality arising in a confused mind. That's all. And when we see things more clearly, then it's only natural that we help. It's only natural that we reach out to others, that we offer support to others. It's only natural that we call out injustice for what it is. It's only natural that we call out atrocity for what it is. It's like your body. Every part of your body supports every other part of your body. It's not like your heart says, well, I only care about me, so I'm not going to bother with pumping oxygen to the lungs. Well, they'll figure things out on their own. No, everything in your body works together, naturally, effortlessly. So it's the same when we recognize that we're all in this together, that I am the black man shot for jogging in a white neighborhood. That was me. Of course I care. How could I not? I was that Hispanic family with an empty bank account and an empty refrigerator. Of course I care. How could I not? How could I possibly turn a blind eye and a cold heart to these people? How could I possibly do that? That could only be possible if I was lost in the delusion of self-centeredness. Otherwise, there's no way. Instead, again, we seek to help. We seek, what can I do? How can I be of benefit? Looking for tangible ways to support, tangible ways uh, to address the symptoms, but also the causes. So looking to see what is it that allows these things to happen. So earlier today, Ayasoma was telling me, or maybe it was yesterday, Ayasoma was telling me how the whole George Floyd thing was really deeply upsetting to her. Um, and that was when I realized that I've had a different experience than her because I grew up in this country. So since I was a little child, I've heard about things like this constantly. Since I was a little child, it's um, been a recurrent theme. Police kill unarmed Black person. No charges filed. Or charges filed but then dismissed. Charges filed, police officer released on temporary suspension of duty. I've heard these things my entire life. It's not news to me. It's been going on for as long as I can remember. What's changed is that in the last few years, everyone's carrying a video camera in their pocket. That's what's changed. But the stories haven't changed. It's been going on for my entire life. It's not new to me. So asking ourselves, what is it that allows this to happen? Again, this has been going on my whole life. So it's something I'm used to. I'm used to this happening. Police kill Black people and get away with it. What allows this to happen and how can we change that system? What can we do to make a difference? Hispanic immigrants being treated like animals, like they're worthless. Again, it's been going on for my entire life. It's nothing new to me. So what can we do about it? How can we make a difference? What can we do to change the situation? What can we do to bring kindness? What can we do to bring fairness? What can we do to bring equity? And if there's a feeling of helplessness, well, that's also delusion, because we do have the ability to help. Look around. See what's available to you. What options do you have? If you don't know, then ask. Ask others, what can I do? How can I support? What can I do to be of benefit in these situations? Even just being willing to stand up and say, this is wrong. This is not appropriate. This is not acceptable. This has to be changed. Even just the willingness to say that out loud is already helping a little bit. Because the other thing I remember is for all the 30 plus years that I've lived in this country, I've constantly heard these stories. And usually the reaction I hear is, well, we can't do anything about it. Oh, well. Or I hear apathy. Or I hear people saying, oh, well, they probably deserved it anyway. Or I hear people saying, well, that's what happens when you break the law. Or I hear people saying, well, it's their own fault. But most commonly, I just hear people say, well, we can't do anything about it. And that's the end of it. I've been hearing this all my life. But actually just being willing to say, no, this is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to kill an unarmed person. It's not acceptable to let people starve in their homes. It's not acceptable to detain small children separate from their parents. These are acts of unbelievable cruelty, and they're not acceptable. We do not permit this. This is not something that we can allow. So just being willing to stand up and say that out loud already changes things. And we have that right in this country. In some countries, if you dare to say that the police did something wrong, well, you can go to jail for that. You can go to jail just for posting an angry message on Twitter in some countries, if you're even allowed access to Twitter in the first place. But in this country, fortunately, we have a certain amount of freedom to at least say, no, this is not okay. No, you cannot kill Black people on the streets. I'm sorry, this is not something that's acceptable. No, it's not okay to deny government support to immigrants just because they didn't go through the proper immigration procedure. No, that's not okay. We need to treat these people like humans because they are. So having that courage and willingness to stand up and say, this is immoral, this is unacceptable, that already helps things a little bit. And then take it one step farther. So first is speech, next is action. Take it one step farther. Look around, see. What organizations are there that are working to fix these problems? And how can I help them? What can I do to support them? And when you do this, then you can feel the seed of compassion growing in your heart. And the more it grows, the stronger your practice becomes. Compassion and wisdom are not separable. They go together. They support each other. So the more you grow that compassion through speech and action, then the deeper and stronger your wisdom becomes. And our goal of awakening comes ever closer, day by day. So I think that's all I have to say for now. So if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and type them in and I'll answer as best I can.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Dante, for addressing these topics. And yeah, really going zero BS. All right. So Maria says, in other words, Buddhism is not a static individual practice.
Well, it's certainly not static. As for individual, it depends what you mean by individual. So maybe if you could clarify what you mean by that. But definitely we need to recognize that others are not separate from ourselves, and we are not separate from others. And if we turn apathy towards others, then that means we don't particularly care about ourselves either. And that will prevent us from making progress on the path. Apathy is apathy. It doesn't matter who it's turned towards. That's a mind state which poisons our mind. It's a huge stumbling block on the path to awakening.
And Kevin says, I'm doing this practice of past lives wrong because I fall into apathy. For example, this is just the nature of samsara. It won't change irrespective of actions, like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. But I think I'm seeing more now what you mean. The food distribution example helps.
Yeah, so saying, well, as Ayasama pointed out yesterday, saying it's just the nature of samsara, well, that's falling into the error of trying to apply the ultimate reality perspective to conventional reality, which doesn't work particularly well. So it is true. This is the nature of samsara. Samsara is this bizarre mixture of good things and bad things. And it's got all the good things and all the bad things. It's all here. That is the nature of samsara. That's true. But nonetheless, if we do not give rise to compassion, if we stay in our little self-centered bubble of apathy and disregard, then we will continue to be stuck in samsara and we will continue cycling through all these different states of torment. And we will not attain awakening. So yeah, from one perspective, it's true, samsara cannot be fixed. That's true. But on the other hand, if we act as though samsara can't be fixed, then we'll be trapped in it forever. So yeah, samsara can't be fixed, but we have to try sincerely and diligently. We have to try. Because it is that trying that leads to freedom from samsara. It is that trying which leads to awakening. Why did the Buddha go through so many lifetimes to become a Sammasambuddha? Why did he do it? Because he wanted to save all sentient beings. He wanted to help all beings be free of suffering. Did he succeed? No! But it was that great vow which enabled him to become a Sammasambuddha. And he helped a lot of people. So the vow to save all sentient beings, it's sometimes called the impossible vow. You cannot fulfill it. And yet we try with all sincerity and diligence because it is trying with all sincerity and diligence that leads to awakening.
Sadhu. And James says, I recall the Buddha advising against kings from locking up criminals and instead redistributing wealth from the treasury. Feels so relevant now.
Yeah. The Buddha was a huge fan of social welfare programs. Yep.
And then Jones says, quote, call out injustice for what it is, end of quote. How can we avoid projecting onto others with this understanding that we are them too? For instance, I saw someone believe a state senator who was arrested, ... I don't know if something else is coming up.
I don't understand the question.
How can we avoid projecting onto others with this understanding, call out injustice for what it is, that we are them too? For instance, I saw someone believe a state senator who was arrested from another's point of view would cause them to self-destruct.
I don't understand. I'm sorry. Can you rephrase your question, please?
Yeah, Dan, if you can explain a little bit better what you mean, that would be great. So then Bhante can address it fully. And James says, I have seen everywhere online, from Bhikkhu Bodhi to Venerable Chanda, angry comments stating that the monastics have no right to talk about this as per the Vinaya rules. Bhante, can you speak on this? And this is, actually, I'm familiar with what James is talking about. It's people saying that in the Vinaya there are precepts that monastics should not be involved in politics.
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. So I'm deeply familiar with the Vinaya. In fact, I translated all of the monastic rules. So I've scoured through the Vinaya Pitaka in Pali. I'm quite familiar with what's in there. Yeah, and it's not true that we can't speak out about politics. No, it's not true. But also a more important issue is Why is it that we like to hide certain issues behind the word politics? This is not a matter of politics, it's a matter of cruelty. It's not a matter of politics, it's a matter of oppression. It's not a matter of politics, it's a matter of racism. You can't just stick it behind the word politics and therefore pretend that that means Buddhist monks can't talk about it. The Buddha said killing is unwholesome. The Buddha said praising killing is unwholesome. The Buddha said encouraging people to kill is unwholesome. The Buddha said not killing is wholesome. The Buddha said praising non-killing is wholesome. The Buddha said encouraging others to not kill is wholesome. So if that's politics, then apparently the Buddha talked about politics all the time, and in fact encouraged us to do the same.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm experiencing lots of Dhamma Sukha. Thank you, Pam. And Salini is asking, why the more compassion we develop, the deeper wisdom will be developed?
Because cultivating compassion leads to a deep understanding of not self. That's why. And it leads to the relinquishment of self-attachment and self-grasping. That's why.
And Bradley is quoting the suttas as usual. I love it. One of my favorite moments of our live streams. So in Anguttara Nikaya 863, I will develop the heart's release by compassion. I'll cultivate it, make it my vehicle and my basis, keep it up, consolidate it, and properly implement it.
Yeah, properly implement it. Yep.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Gita, well, Matt is sending a little heart. And Gita says, Bhante Body is in full support of the teachings of the Buddha. He teaches the Dhamma to all of us. He does, and he is a great inspiration of practice, full circle, which is why, once again, today we're supporting Buddhist Global Relief, which was a direct statement of Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, that compassion is something that we really actively need to pursue. So really, putting our words into actions and transforming all these beautiful teachings into something that is relevant in first person into her life, into our lives. And Bradley is saying, it's no more that people don't like their viewpoints challenged, especially when influential people share them. It's totally fine for the president to condone all sorts of horrors, but unthinkable for someone committed to peace to speak in praise of peace. So this is in regards to all the comments that apparently whenever monastics, so Venerable Chanda and Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi both posted a petition for George Floyd, so that the people would be held accountable. And so there was a bit of criticism, not from everyone, of course, but just from a group of people, which is what I believe they're addressing.
There's a lovely Dhammapada verse, which I found very helpful to me over the years, where the Buddha says, those who speak a lot are criticized. Those who speak little are criticized. Those who do not speak at all are criticized. No one escapes criticism. So in other words, no matter what we do, somebody somewhere does not like it. And somebody somewhere is going to criticize it, no matter what we do. Whether what we do is right or wrong, somebody criticizes it. So we might as well do what's right. And as the Buddha himself said, the right thing to do is to speak in praise of non-killing and to encourage others to not kill. So that does mean publicly saying things like killing unarmed Black people on the streets is not okay. Please stop doing it. This is totally in line with the Buddha's instructions to say these sorts of things. Again, there are some people in the world who don't like it when Buddhist monks dare to speak up about controversial subjects. But as I see, it's not only our right to speak up about these things, but it's our duty. It's our duty to say what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. To do otherwise is dishonest. To do otherwise is disrespecting the Buddha and his words. If I just stand by and pretend that there's nothing wrong, well, that makes me a liar, doesn't it? That means I'm not being faithful to the Buddha's message. Okay.
Thank you, Bante. And oh, V, good to see you online. Long time no see. And James says, Bhikkhu Bodhi is the reason I even know what the suttas are. His translations and introductions made me start reading. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yes, I second that feeling. And then I'm not quite sure if I think if you could rephrase the question rather, but I'll say it again to Bante, but it seems like it's the same as before. Quote, call out injustice for what it is. How can we avoid projecting onto others with this understanding that we were once them too? For example, I saw someone believe a state senator who was arrested from another's point of view would cause them to self-destruct. I projected onto this poor person somewhat.
Yeah, I don't understand. So yeah, if you can say your question in a different way, because I don't understand your meaning.
Yeah, like using other words then, perhaps? That would be... Okay, Bradley is pointing out that one part of Dan's message is missing. And yes, I believe he's right, because it says 1 out of 3 or 3 out of 3. It might be that part 2 doesn't show up or something. And James is asking, Bante, what do we do when other monastics brush off COVID-19 as no issue or a government intervention or a government invention, not intervention, a government invention? How can we develop compassion for monastics like this?
Wow, I didn't know there were any monastics who had signed on to the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, me neither.
That's, I would like to say it's surprising, but actually it's not terribly surprising that, because monastics, of course, most of us are not enlightened. So it does mean you get some fringe monastics who hold strange opinions. It does happen. Well, what do you do about it? The evidence is overwhelming that there is in fact a pandemic going on. But if somebody chooses to disregard that evidence, what can you do to convince them otherwise? Yeah, I'm not really sure. So that's dealing with the case of willful delusion. So Ayasoma was speaking to me the other day about her interactions with one of the conspiracy theorist people, where the person was just openly rejecting any news source that was talking about the pandemic as though it was happening. So the neighborhood which we used to be in, so our previous monastery was in Rockaway Beach in New York City, which is one of the hardest hit areas in New York City, one of the areas in New York City which has the highest percentage of COVID-19 cases, the highest percentage of deaths and hospitalizations. So even like the tiny local newspapers are reporting on this. So it's not like it's only the big mainstream media that reports on it. Even the tiny local newspapers are reporting on it. But I, someone was saying that the conspiracy theorist people are even sweeping aside these small local newspapers, which as being all part of the cover up or whatever. So yeah, it's challenging when somebody gets really firmly rooted in a certain belief. Then it's challenging to shake them free of that belief, and sometimes you just have to shake your head and walk away. When somebody really firmly wants to believe something, it's really hard to convince them otherwise. Unless Ayasoma, do you have any suggestions on how to help with this situation?
Hmm. Well, just as Bante mentioned, so when we actually, as the Buddha mentioned, if all it took for people to attain awakening was to put a robe on, then we would just put robes on every child as soon as they were born. So the robe, we respect the robe because it represents a commitment to practice, a commitment to awakening, a commitment to practice the teachings. But sometimes, whether we're ordained or not, we understand the teachings, but we can have a difficulty following through them, like actually practicing them. So whether it's a monastic or a lay person, I think we should always have compassion, always understanding that it's coming from greed, hatred, and delusion that is present in the person outside of us and the person inside of us as well. It was so beautiful how our friend Edward, I don't know if he's present right now, but yesterday evening, he's African American, and he ended the session by saying that he had experienced no anger throughout this situation, and my heart was full of joy, but also recognizing that I couldn't say the same thing when I first, when I saw the video. Well, the first emotion that I felt was extreme sadness, distraught, and then anger also aroused. So it's understanding that sometimes other people, it doesn't matter if they're ordained or not ordained, they might have some qualities more developed. Like Edward, he's not an ordained monastic, and I'm pretty sure he has experienced oppression in his life. He's 62, he said yesterday, for being a Black man in New York. I'm pretty sure he has experienced oppression, and that this sort of, what we're talking about today, it's not something that is news to him, yet he had developed a mind that was much stronger than me, that where I'm kind of like more of a spectator of this rather than involved in first person. So yes, having compassion always for people who are less skillful, and admiring people who, on the other hand, have developed really beautiful qualities that are in accordance to Dhamma. So always going back to the Dhamma and seeing what did the Buddha say? What is the appropriate response? Instead of thinking like what we think is right and what we think is true, because we're unenlightened, so we don't know. That's why we have the guidance of the Buddha. This is, I guess, what I would to share.
Yeah.
And Maya says, and in this case in particular, there is no doubt that it was unwholesome. There is no space for interpretation. It was a plain, clear assassination in cold blood. And one second. Oh, Melinda says, I'm coming out of hiding, haha, to say thank you, Bantanaya, for your kind and loving support. My heart is full of love. Oh, we love you too, Melinda. I'm happy you're not in hiding anymore. It's always good to come out. We support coming out at Buddhist Insights. No hiding. And Bradley says, I've heard some people use emptiness as a reason to not get ruffled about the goings on in samsara. There's no good or bad, it just is. That's the quote. I think they're well meaning, but I feel this is a mishandling of the teachings. Clearly, the Buddha said there is unwholesome and wholesome. And while I do agree that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed or drowned by the atrocities of samsara, that doesn't mean these things don't matter. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's about right. So, absolute truth applies to absolute reality, and conventional truth applies to conventional reality. So when we're practicing meditation, for example, that's a great time to focus on absolute truth, because then you can get into some incredibly profound states of insight. But when operating in conventional reality, we have to follow the rules of conventional truth. And that includes things like morality, wholesome and unwholesome, right and wrong. So we can't sweep that under the carpet. We can't pretend that everything is fine. So yeah, I mean, technically, as I said earlier, technically, samsara can't be changed. That's technically true. As a whole, as a total overall picture, samsara can't be changed. That's true. But that's not where we are. We're right here on the ground in the midst of samsara. And we're trying to navigate our way through samsara in a way that leads towards awakening. And for that to be possible, we have to follow the rules of samsara. We have to follow the rules of conventional truth. Otherwise, we'll just keep running in circles, getting stuck in dead ends, backtracking and backsliding. We won't get anywhere anytime soon. So as far as not getting ruffled, well, we definitely shouldn't fall into unwholesome mind states. We shouldn't fall into anger or hatred, for example. And yeah, we should try to maintain equanimity. But equanimity is not apathy. And equanimity is not indifference. And equanimity does not excuse inactivity. So, for example, when Kisa Gotami came to the Buddha, so Kisa Gotami, who had just lost her baby son had just died. So she came to the Buddha. The Buddha didn't say, oh, well, it's all emptiness. There is no mother, there is no son. Get over it. That's not what the Buddha said. Instead, the Buddha devised a compassionate means to help show Kisa Gotami the fact that it was not just her who had experienced this kind of loss, but that it was an experience that everybody goes through. So he was actually provoking her heart of compassion, her ability to recognize that her suffering and the suffering of others were not different, as a way of helping her to cultivate wisdom. So it's not proper to just say like, oh, everything is emptiness, therefore it doesn't matter if the cops kill some black people. That's not Buddhism. I can't even imagine the Buddha saying something like that. That's certainly not what we see in the suttas. Okay.
Thank you so much, Bante. And Sally is asking, does compassion mean simply wishing anyone to be free from suffering now, no matter what kind of pain they are experiencing? We should try our best to release the pain?
More or less, yeah. So compassion is wishing for beings to be free of suffering. And from that attitude, then comes speech and action. Yeah, that's compassion.
And Bradley is also adding, I know that when people try to think of compassionate things to do, it can seem impossible. Like nothing we can do matters. But one useful teaching I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh is that we shouldn't forget we can always start with ourselves,
Hmm.
committing to harmlessness, love, and kindness, and working on the seeds of hatred that are in all of us.
Yeah. So actually, the Buddha said that one of the greatest gifts we can give to the world is to commit to following the five precepts. It says giving the gift of safety to the world, giving the gift of safety to everyone that we meet, just following the five precepts. So that's a huge, big step. But also this delusion that we can't do anything. So I'd really like to challenge that. So today I would encourage you. So this is supposed to be a day-long retreat. Uh, and normally during a day-long retreat, I would encourage you to do a lot of meditation. And of course, you're welcome to do a lot of meditation if you want to. But actually, I would encourage you to go online and start searching for social justice movements, food justice movements, um, inequality. mm, so anything which addresses inequality, anything which seeks to better the lives of people, anything which seeks to address issues of mm, yeah, oppression, unfairness, inequality, anything which seeks to alleviate the suffering of others in any way. Start researching these things and seeing what is there that you can support. What organizations are there that are doing good work to alleviate social injustice, to fix the food system in this country, to uh, build up social welfare programs, and so on? Look, see what's there, and what can you do to help them out? Even just sharing them on Facebook is already a way of helping. But see if you can go beyond that and do more than that. Yeah, so take the time today to actually do something compassionate, not just sitting on your cushion thinking about it. I mean, that's good too, of course. It's good to do meditation on compassion. That's great. But also, like looking online and saying, what can I do? What can I do to help make the world a better place? Um, yeah, check it out. Racial justice, social justice, food justice. What is there that you can support? So today we're particularly pointing to Buddhist global relief, but don't let it stop just there. Also look around and see what else is going on that you can support.
All right. Thank you so much, Bante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We will be meeting again at 2:30 p.m. So we can have more meditation and Dhamma discussion at that time. And then again at 7:30 p.m. So look forward to seeing you virtually later. And may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering.
Sadhu,
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 sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu.